Well, guys, we just had a very, very enjoyable day nymph fishing.
Yes, we did.
It was
There
good.
are certain things people don't like about nymph fishing, certain things people love about nymph fishing. Why don't we talk a little bit about what we like about nymph fishing?
Sure.
I personally love the fact that when you're nymphing, a lot of times you seem to catch a little bit bigger fish.
Yeah, I
mean,
agree.
The bigger fish definitely seem to be down a little bit further than the big boys.
right.
They don't show themselves near as often, and I love that about nymphing.
It takes a lot of big bugs to bring some of those really big fish up top, but they always have to be eating. So if you go down, below the surface, you can have a shot at those guys any day of the year.
Yeah.
Chris, as a guide, what are the common mistakes that you see a person make when they learn how to nymph fish?
Well, Brandon, I think a lot of the mistakes people make has a lot to do with the drift. If they don't get the right drift, it's difficult to catch fish, but I think it's easy to teach people to get the right drift, especially as a guide. As a guide, after you've taught them how to get the right drift, I think the biggest mistake they make is hook sets. With a nymph setup, you have to set the hook a little harder because your nymphs are down underneath the water, and a lot of times people get these dry fly techniques where you just lift up on the rod. That won't cut it with a nymph set. It just won't. You have to really give that a pretty firm set so that the tension gets down underneath the water to hook the fish. A lot of times people will set the hook and bring the rod straight up, and the nymphs either don't even come out of the water or else they're going to come right back in the person's face and cause a big tangle up. And by the time that happens, the fish has already spit the nymph out.
Yeah.
You have to be quick. The time that indicator is going down underneath the water, you need to be coming up with the hook set.
The biggest key to nymph fishing that I saw people making mistakes on were drifts. You know, where to put the fly, where to come from, what position to come from to get to that fish. I saw so many people try to cast over a weed bed or over a rock, when all they'd have to do is take 10 minutes, walk around down below the fish, get their angle just a little bit better, whether it's downstream or upstream, make that cast. And I can't stress enough, the first cast and presentation is key. I mean, even to dry fly fishing, nymph fishing, any kind of fishing, but that first cast and that presentation is really what I think gets the trout to eat.
That's your money shot.
Even how many times have you seen a size 16 bug on the water and you happen to have a size 14 bug on the water and you put it at the right spot, make a good mand, a good presentation, the fish still eats it.
That's right.
I mean, it happens all the time. So I think you really got to concentrate on the presentation of the nymph.
Usually it's the cold water, they'll wear out quicker.
Let's hope so.
Sometimes.
Beautiful rainbow. Net him. Ah, yeah. Good old Henry's Neck rainbow, Chris.
Big fish,
Yeah.
Okay. Good rainbow. Got a couple nice jumps out of him. Okay, we'll go ahead and let him go. See if we can't get another one. Brandon, I know that you're a casting instructor. You see a lot of different casting techniques. How would a person go about casting a nymph, or what are some mistakes that are made that way?
Well, I think one of the key points that I tell people, and you brought this up earlier, Chris, is when you're false casting, especially with weighted nymphs, strike indicators, weights, when you have lots of things on your line like that, you want to try and minimize your false casting. I see so many times when there's an angler in the middle of the stream and you're trying to put him on fish or trying to help him with his cast, and his line's in the air and he's casting for front cast, back cast, front cast, back cast, and he is changing the amount of line that he's casting, or maybe a gust of wind comes up. Next thing you know, he's got line tangled all over the place. And especially with some of the techniques and the rigs that we use today, if you throw a lot of false casts, you're just giving yourself every opportunity to make a little mistake and get a tangle. And that can be really frustrating. I think that's one of the reasons people, kind of shy away from nymphs sometimes.
One of the big things to remember too, when you're casting your nymphs, in order to keep that tangle or your flies from tangling up, you really want to use a lot of power on your backstroke. What I mean by that is, your normal cast, you come back, you hear the 10, the 2, the 10, the 2. With the nymph, a lot of times what I teach and what I like to tell people to do is to stop the tip of that rod, boom, right up top, almost 12 o'clock.
Almost vertical.
Yeah, almost vertical, exactly. Really power that thing straight up there. And then stop it, hesitate, let that line load up, and then when you go forward, really drive that butt down. Drive that butt down, the line will lay nice and flat on the line, and it takes that back fly and it really just turns it right over.
You know, a lot of people don't really pay attention to where they stop their back cast.
Yeah.
And, you know, a tendency a lot of times is for people to break the wrist and drop that rod tip
Yeah.
too far back.
Yeah.
And when you do that, you're dropping all those split shot in the nymph really low. When you
Yeah.
come back forward, boy, the sound of that whizzing by your ear is just enough to scare you to death. It really is.